A warm welcome to EconoChat Let's Talk Business with Mr. Daniel Steinman. Last week, we ended our conversation mentioning how the economy affects you and I on a daily basis, every minute, every day. And today we're going to continue this conversation, and we're going to talk about, measuring prosperity. And Mr. Daniel Steinman is here, and he's going to explain to us, or rather break it down for us. This also involves, of course, the GDP, that is gross domestic product. So, Mr. Daniel Steinman, welcome.
Thank you, Elsie.
Okay, so we're talking measuring prosperity. We've seen how inflation and everything affects us on a daily basis. But sometimes our listeners actually do not understand how this really, really has an impact on their daily life. So can you perhaps just break it down for us in simple terms, like you always do?
Yes, certainly, Elsie. When I left here last week, these last words of yours and mine, that parting remark of the economy touches you every day, all the time, that stuck in my head. Because I've been in this type of conversation often, especially with university students. They've just started chewing on this big academic discipline which they call economics. And here in their second or third year, when they sort of start getting a handle on it, when they start grasping the concepts, they don't forget the philosophical side. So eventually they usually ask me, so what does this mean for me, for you, for the ordinary Namibian, the everyday guy? And that's a very valid question, because we can be talking about economics and we can measure the economy and we can break it down and we can devise formulas and everything, and draw graphs and play with the statistics. But if there's no relationship between the Namibian citizen and the economy that we measure, it's a futile exercise. There has to be a meaning, a reason why we do it. And this is why I want to talk about how do you measure prosperity. Because you can imagine, let's say there are 2.1 or 2.2 million people in Namibia. So it means that there are more than 2 million opinions on what the economy should be. Because everybody sees it subjectively. What does it mean for me? I'm not concerned what the economy means for you or for the National Statistics Agency. I'm concerned what it means for me. And I think that is the case with 99% of the Namibian population. Everybody realizes there's an economy and that we're all part of it. But what does it mean for me? So let's look at prosperity. And the conventional way of translating prosperity into something that you can measure, or that two economists or that two ordinary people like you and I can talk about, is called GDP, Gross Domestic Product. Now, in the past, I've often explained that this is very much like the turnover of a company.
You have.
But with GDP, there are certain technical limitations. And the reason is that you get in GDP, the way that it is put together. And remember, it's not taken out of thin air. These are done on IMF guidelines, International Monetary Fund, so that all GDPs of all countries across the world are measured in the same way. Now, with more than 225 countries or authorities, you can imagine that this becomes a very complex picture. And to make sure that you measure it in a way that the one can be compared to the other. The problem with GDP is that you get a lot of duplication. That's typically people who train to go work in the bank or who study for a degree in banking or in finance to go to a bank. They know about this problem. If I take $1 and I give it to you and you give me a lollipop, then that $1 has added value of $1 in that transaction. If you give that same dollar back to me and I return your lollipop to you, same dollar has added another dollar in the transaction value. Now that's simplifying it to the extreme, and it's not really that simple, but it's a very good example. That you can sell me something and I give you money, and I can sell it back to you and you give me back that money. But in the way that economics is measured, those are two transactions. So that $1 generated a value of $2. Now you can imagine where 2 million people interact on a daily basis, the complexity is enormous because there are, let's say, 200 million transactions in a day. And every time the same dollar gets duplicated. So that is why one has to be very careful when you talk about gross domestic product. Remember, it counts every transaction, out and in. That is where the question arises: how true is it a reflection of the prosperity in a country for everybody?
Okay. We leave you with that question, and I'm sure that Mr. Daniel Steinman will break it down for us, explain it to us in a very simple format so that we can understand it. But before I go further, let's quickly go for a short break.